Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfares with the top stories in the global economy. Coming up today, PlayStation 4 breaks sales forecasts, and the G20 aim to lift global growth. First, look at the headlines. The Obama administration and the European Union invited Russia as they forge a much-needed financial bailout for Ukraine. Russia doesn't rule out supporting the IMF, but placed on hold its own $15 billion assistance package for Kiev. European leaders said a trade and aid deal with Europe could be resuscitated and signed with a new government as early as next month. They stressed that Ukraine not be split apart, fearing a military invasion by Russia, and as pro-Russian demonstrators called for the secession of Crimea. The Mobile World Congress 2014 kicked off in Barcelona with global tech giants rolling out their latest smartphones. Under the theme Creating What's Next, global tech players are among the 1,700 firms participating from 220 countries. Samsung, the world's #1 maker of smartphones, is expected to launch the Galaxy S5, while LG released the G Pro 2, a cross between a smartphone and tablet PC. Nokia, meanwhile, introduced the first entry in what will become a new family of Nokia Android phones. The Windows-based phone hits an attractive pricing level in places such as India, Indonesia, and Russia. The price of oil rose Monday, continuing its climb for a 7th straight week, fueled by U.S. demand for heating oil as unusually cold weather persists. Benchmark U.S. crude for April delivery was up 28 cents to $102.48 a barrel in trading on the New York Mercantile Exchange. Oil was up 2% over the week amid rising demand for heating oil in the U.S. While forecasters predict a return of more cold weather, analysts expect oil prices might drop as global demand slows amid ample supplies. A report in manufacturing in China last week suggested global economic growth could weaken, reducing demand for gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. And Chinese property prices showed signs of losing steam amid policy tightening. New housing prices in China's 70 biggest cities rose 9.6% year-on-year in January, down from 9.9% in December. Of the 70 cities monitored by the National Bureau of Statistics, 6 posted price declines. The government has gradually tightened monetary conditions since the middle of 2013, raising the cost of funding for banks and, in turn, lifting mortgage costs for home buyers. Developer shares were under heavy selling pressure, while shares in Vanke, the country's biggest listed property developer, fell 6% in morning trading on the Chinese stock market. The PlayStation 4 is now available in Sony's home country of Japan, over 3 months after it first became available in the US. But while it managed to nearly double Microsoft's Xbox One sales in the US for the month of January, Japanese game makers still lag behind their Western counterpart. Daniel Roth has more in the next report.
After 3 months of patience in Japan and watching as the PlayStation 4 was released in the United States, Western Europe, and Latin America, the game console has finally arrived. Sony's wildly popular product used to be launched in Japan first, Sony's home base, but in part because of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's policy of focus on exports, the tables have turned. The new direction seems to have worked out. PS4 sales exceeded 5.3 million units, a huge success considering their original aim was to surpass 5 million by March of this year.
We've actually been really delighted with the response to PlayStation 4 so far. We were able, just this week, to announce that sales have topped 5.3 million units worldwide. I think that's confirmed as probably the most successful console launch in history. And it's been really just phenomenal across all of the different markets. We are doing our very best to keep the product in supply, but it's proving to be extremely challenging right now.
Sony is taking the lead in their battle with Microsoft. The US company said in January that it has sold little more than 3 million units of its console, the Xbox One.
The PlayStation 4 has far better specs than the Xbox One when you compare them. So I reckon that the difference between them will become really apparent over the next 3 to 5 years.
With these figures, Sony has something to smile about after selling off its PC company and losing €810 million in 2013. They're also going to have to let go 5,000 employees, 3,500 of which will be outside of Japan. Their aim is to consolidate operations around telecommunications, medical technology, and of course, video games.
We're joined now by i24 News journalist Shai Ringel for some more insight into the PlayStation revolution. Shai.
Good evening.
Thanks for joining us. So, I'm not a gamer. I have to be honest, I'm dating myself when I say this, but like, the last time I really was into games was like the Commodore 128 or something like that. Why does PlayStation 4 matter? Why does the success matter?
The entire next-gen consoles matters. It's the biggest entertainment industry in the world today. It's much bigger than movie industry, and it's much bigger than the music industry.
Okay.
It's $1 billion industry that we are not talking about enough.
I see.
Because we used to think about gamers as these little kids,
right.
14, 15, who play inside their rooms, and that's it. And no, games and the game consoles will be the future of entertainment industry, no matter what.
Given that, you know, clearly it's a very good thing for Sony, but could it be Sony's saving grace?
It can. Sony is a huge company, and the game, their game industry is a side of it. They have a really good publicity stunt here, because when you think about Sony, you think about gamers and games and fun. It gives Sony this fun image.
But there's so much more to Sony than fun.
Yeah, exactly. But they want to be consumed as a fun company. They want to be the fun company. They usually sell the PlayStation as this really cool thing. They have a really good indie gamers and indie developers working with them. And there's a really good feeling about the PlayStation 4. And gamers love the PlayStation.
I see, and especially considering that Sony is a little behind their Western counterpart. But hold on a second, they're doing much better than the Xbox One.
Yeah.
Why is that?
You have to consider that PlayStation did a really bold move when they decided that the next-gen console will be just for gamers. It's a really good device. It's a really nice to hold in your hand, the new remote and everything. But it is for gamers, where Microsoft took a really different take on everything. They decided that the next-gen console will be a home entertainment machine.
Which has more appeal in your mind, or no?
It's more appealing to the big audience and not to gamers. You put this machine inside your living room, you connect everything into it, your television, your cable, everything, and then you speak to it. You say Xbox open. And
yet
Xbox.
People seem to want games. I mean, the PlayStation 4 is doing better. Or is it just a matter of time?
I think it's just a matter of time. I think that Sony is really good at the beginning line and not at the finish line, where I think Microsoft are thinking long term here.
I see.
Where a lot of people will see the Xbox and will want this really gorgeous machine that really looks from the future. PlayStation 4 is the machine for now. And the Xbox One feels like the machine from the future. You talk to it, it can see you, it can recognize your face. There are a lot of really imaginative things that Microsoft did with the Xbox that people still don't understand.
I see.
And Sony made the console that I want to buy right now. And I think that Microsoft made a console that I will buy in the future.
Okay, well, thanks, Shai Ringel, i24 News correspondent, for your comments about Xbox versus PlayStation.
Thank you.
To a very different topic now, the G20 seeks to lift global growth by 2 additional percentage points, generating more than $2 trillion in the global economy. But the reforms needed to get there will require all member countries to make certain sacrifices. Let's see the next report for more.
After 2 days of meeting at the G20 meeting in Sydney, Australia, a target number for growth has been pinpointed. The aim is global economic growth at 2 percentage points above the projected numbers by 2018. On their own, the countries of the G20 represent 85% of the world economy.
We're committed to implementing policies that aim to lift our collective GDP by more than 2% above the trajectory implied by current policies over the next 5 years.
It's a goal that aims to generate more than $2 trillion in the global economy, and which the finance ministers say could create many jobs. But to get there, each country will have to implement a number of reforms, including cuts to employment protections of up to 10 and 20%.
Concrete actions across the G20 can turn this objective into a reality. This will include G20 countries making commitments to policies to boost new private investment, particularly in infrastructure.
The International Monetary Fund, which forecasts global growth at 3.7% for 2014, says that the move could add half a percentage point to global growth annually over the next 4 years. Still, the global economy remains fragile, particularly in emerging countries. Part of the reason for the unease is the U.S. Federal Reserve moved to reduce monthly asset purchases. With less market liquidity and the possibility of a future rise in U.S. interest rates, investors are pulling out capital from emerging countries. To limit this, central banks of the G20 are saying that they will do a better job of coordinating monetary policy.
Because of the interconnectedness, because of the growth in the emerging market economies recently, there is a solidity on all sides to actually face what will inevitably be volatility in the future.
Another area that was discussed was the fight against tax evasion. The G20 endorsed the automatic exchange of tax information developed by the OECD. 42 countries have already committed to implement the exchange, which should begin in late 2015.
And we move on now to Watch the Media with Daniel Roth in Media Watch. So Daniel, I understand that we're going to watch Wolves in The Economist. Is that correct?
Yeah, so The Economist, which has been carrying a lot lately, stories about inequality. And,
yes.
You know, we've been seeing this all throughout the media.
Somewhat surprising, actually.
Yeah, it's not like a left-wing pamphlet that's being sold at demonstrations downtown. It's The Economist.
It's clearly the zeitgeist that we are faced with. Okay, so what about wolves?
So what they're saying is that the Wolf of Wall Street, also something we've been talking about a lot lately.
Yes, a lot.
The real Wolf of Wall Street is not on Wall Street. The real Wolf of Wall Street is a San Francisco techie. It's Silicon Valley. You're not wearing a suit, you're wearing a hoodie. These are the people who, in this day and age, in the 21st century, really represent, as John Oliver, the comedian, put it, the money, the opulence, and 10% of the sex of the Wolf of Wall Street.
I'll be honest with you, I actually thought that the Facebook movie was going to be more like the Wolf of Wall Street movie. But it wasn't. It was actually quite tame. But that's basically what we're talking about, right? It's the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, so to speak. Yeah?
Right. It's the Zuckerbergs of the world are actually the people who, you know, in this conversation, this ongoing conversation about inequality, people are starting actually to look at them. And this piece in The Economist is saying this is starting to happen now. If you look at the protests happening in San Francisco around these buses that are coming into downtown San Francisco and busing people out to Silicon Valley to work in their $1 billion jobs and then busing them back, causing rent to skyrocket.
Sure.
People are starting to pay attention to this, and they're starting to get upset by it.
And rightfully so.
Right. It's and so, you know, this piece is kind of it's really touching on something that's true today, which is, at the end of the day, Wall Street's no longer Wall Street. Wall Street's on Silicon Valley.
Right. It's on a lot of other things apparently as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So what else do we have here?
The New York Times, and basically everyone else has been covering this Comcast Netflix deal. They signed a deal. No one knows the details of it. Nobody knows how much it's for. But what was happening was Comcast has their own video site where you can watch movies and TV, and Netflix is a site where you can do that. So what they were doing on Comcast was slowing down the Netflix videos to make it a little less enticing to go to Netflix. So what did they do? They about a month ago, the FCC in the U.S., their rules on net neutrality that say that net providers can't charge more money for different things and they have to treat all websites equally, those rules were swept away. The rules were swept away, so this is one of the first instances where you're seeing maybe net neutrality is dying for real, because Netflix, now a huge website, makes up about 30% of traffic during peak hours, has to pay Comcast just to be treated normally in the Comcast internet.
Right.
So, sorry.
It's just more inequality essentially happening, but online. Virtually.
Right. It's basically
virtual inequality.
Virtual inequality, and
justice for all.
What it can really lead to is that my blog, I might have to pay Comcast
You might have to pay me to be on longer. Thank you very much, Daniel Roth.
Have a good one.
This is it for us today. Thank you very much for watching, and please do send us your comments via the feedback site on our website and Twitter and Facebook. Watch you again tomorrow.